Hi guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I have the wonderful Bonnie from Bonnie Bliss Co. with me. She is a somatic sexologist and an intimacy educator down in Melbourne, though you're mostly based online, I believe. You work with women and couples on one-on-one in one-on-one ways, and I also just went to your amazing free masterclass relating to pleasure and women's pleasure, but that was more about your School of Embodied Pleasure that you've just recently opened up, which looks amazing. And you also have a ton of free resources on there that I just noticed. But thank you so much for joining me, Bonnie.
Thanks for having me, Brie.
Awesome. Okay, I just wanted to start off with, I know that I've just put a bunch of words out there, but what is it exactly that you do? And in what sort of setting do you work with women?
So I've been exploring this stuff for around 12 years, and the form that my work has taken has changed a lot in that period. I initially started doing body work and ended up specializing in this type of internal pelvic body work called Yoni mapping. And so I've sat with thousands of women in person and supported them to learn about their bodies and connect with their pelvic space, and then also performed an internal pelvic massage on them to help them to feel more aliveness and sensitivity there, to make friends with that part of their body, to create more blood flow, and to support healing after birth, or emotional support after miscarriage, or all of that kind of thing. But then over the years, I started teaching more and more workshops and retreats. In 2017, I did a practitioner training for yoni mapping therapy. And since then, I haven't been doing much body work at all. And for the last 5 or 6 years, I've mostly offered online programs and private coaching that's really centered around pleasure, and not just pleasure as in like having a quick orgasm or like, getting something, but creating a relationship with our bodies that is nourishing and connected and inspiring, and using pleasure as a resource to support us in our everyday lives so that we are less stressed and frazzled and overwhelmed, and more present and connected with ourselves and our loved ones as well. So that extends to like whole body pleasure and self-care and body awareness, but also obviously has a big component in sexuality and orgasm and partnered intimacy as well.
Amazing. Well, all of that sounds so good. I guess I wanted to really start with when I was researching for this podcast a couple months ago, and I put it out there among my Facebook group and my friends and the women around me that are um, at this stage of life. We're having babies and, working through what that looks like. A lot of the feedback is, after we've had a baby specifically, I mean, I think women go through lots of sexual awakenings if they're lucky in their life. It doesn't feel lucky sometimes, but there's lots of awakenings. But a lot of it came back to after we have a baby. Most of the reports were like, I don't feel intimate with my husband. Like, it's a job, it's a chore. I don't feel pleasure anymore. Like, not even in the vagina, like pleasure in day-to-day life, a loss of overall pleasure. And, I can't even look at myself. Like, my body's changed so much after babies. Why would you say, I mean, specifically in the postpartum, why would you say that there's such a big shift for us as women?
Mm. This is huge, and it's something that comes up with a lot of women that I work with, are mothers, and it's a really natural thing, right? To go through this huge transition, and then to wonder, well, who am I now? Who am I in relationship now? What does my connection with my sexuality mean now? And there's a lot of reasons why we can find this challenging. And I think what can be so hard about it is this narrative that everything should be perfect. You have your baby and everything's great, and you're just in this la la land where things are perfect, and you have your little unit and life is good. But the reality for a lot of people, particularly in the world that we live in, is parenting is really stressful, and particularly new motherhood. It's obviously a lot of sleep deprivation and a lot of energy going out in that caring for your child or children that you then don't have to care for yourself and to nurture an intimate relationship. You've been through this huge transition phase, and like you said, your body's changed, right? And then it can feel complicated to connect with your sexuality in a way that you used to before, because it feels different. Your energy levels are different. Your body feels different. Potentially your pelvic space might feel different. Sometimes your partner's whole experience is different as well, like witnessing you go through the birth portal, and it's a whole thing to navigate. So yeah, I really understand that it's complicated and multi-layered, and there's no quick fix with it, right? It's not just like, oh, just do this one little tip and it'll change everything, because it's just the nature of motherhood, and it is complicated and challenging to unravel. But I think speaking about it is so important and can really make a difference to help other people understand that they're not alone.
Absolutely. And like, you're a fur baby mummy, aren't you? You don't
Yeah.
have.
I
Uh,
don't have my own children. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. You got huskies. That counts.
Yeah.
Like furry baby.
She's definitely like a toddler sometimes.
I guess with my postpartums after my daughter, it was more like a physical change. Like my firstborn, there was a lot of I guess tearing and stuff in the birth. So sex afterwards was physically about 6 months to feel any sort of pleasure. And then after my son, it was more of like I had a spiritual awakening, and I went through a lot of mental changes where sex was the last thing on my mind, because I think as women,
Mm,
when we're under any stress or we're in that fight or flight, sex becomes the end of the spectrum. Like that's so low priority. And
exactly.
navigating your way through that and back to yourself, it can feel really scary. But I mean, you are proving that it's possible to do. I mean, even in the free masterclass, I know that there were women there from all walks of life, older women, younger women, like everyone was logging in, because I think we're all starting to see now that the more we talk about it, the more we open up our stories, like we want more pleasure in our life. Like, and I think this navigates into all aspects of pleasure, like day to day, as well as sexual pleasure, which is amazing. Um, I guess to break down, one of the things I got from your masterclass was that you weren't just talking about like clitoral stimulation being intimacy with yourself. You were talking about like any sort of pleasurable sensation. Can you break down intimacy? Because I think a lot of us have an idea that intimacy is sex, like penile vaginal sex. What is intimacy? Like, what can it get to be?
Right. So, I mean, there's different ways we can look at it: intimacy with yourself and intimacy with someone else. And of course, there's sexual intimacy, like the kind of intimacy you would have with an intimate partner. But then we also can create intimacy with our friends or other people in our lives, right? Just a sense of connection or intimacy or closeness with them. So that's kind of the larger zoomed out picture. I believe that a sense of intimacy with ourselves is really essential if we want to be able to create intimacy with someone else. And this, I think, comes up a lot with mothers, but also just women in general. When we are busy and stressed and exhausted, we're holding a lot for other people, and then we don't prioritize the connection with ourselves. And when we're not feeling connected to our bodies and our pleasure and ourselves and our hearts and our being, then that's going to feel really hard to be inspired to have sex with someone else, right? Because we're not even present with ourselves. So I see that as a big foundational part of moving towards partnered intimacy. And then partnered intimacy, like you said, a lot of people focus on it being penis and vagina. And obviously, not all relationships work that way, but some people, for various reasons, choose not to have penis and vagina sex. Like maybe they've got a medical condition that prevents it, or they have pain, or, they're in a different kind of relationship. Some people identify as asexual, and that's a really valid orientation. So this idea that so many of us have internalized forever is like penis and vagina equals sex. It's no longer that way, right? So intimacy can be so many things. And I know I've really enjoyed intimacy with a partner that was just about like being touched and stroked and nourished, right? Or just receiving, or just like making out like teenagers, or touching each other in different ways. And I think when we focus so much on penetration, we miss out on really meeting each other in the body, in the whole body, in lots of different ways. Like even just putting your naked body against a partner can feel incredible, and and really regulating for the nervous system. But then there's so many different types of touch, which is a big part of what I teach in my programs, like partnered touch practices and how to give your partner a yoni massage or a cock massage. And, all of these really nourishing ways that we can take care of each other, that kind of expand the options, right? The menu of what's possible, instead of just being like, you know what, tonight I definitely wouldn't be up for like penetrative sex, but oh wow, I would be up for just like cuddling and touching or exploring or giving a massage or getting a massage or receiving some oral pleasure or giving some oral pleasure, or there's so many different ways to create sexual intimacy. But then in order to get there, sometimes often we are also going to need emotional intimacy, and that is also something to navigate in relationship and create space for. And
yeah, it's so diverse, and there's not like one answer on what it is, because intimacy means something different for everyone, right? Like it's never going to be one thing. I guess one of the questions that came through when I was talking to my mamas in the group was returning to sex after a baby. So I know with my experiences with my first, like I was 23, I was like, right, it'll just be great and we're going to go back. And so I pushed through the pain. So even though it hurt every time, it wasn't about my pleasure, like it was none of that. And that was just the naivety at the time, I think. And then fast forward 6 years on, I'm about to enter my third postpartum, and I know that I'll approach it very differently. But I guess, what are some of the normal things that you see when someone is returning to sex after having a baby? Like, what do you think that, your clients report to expect, really?
I think returning to sex after a baby is a whole journey, and it'll be different for a lot of people. But a lot of the women that I speak to report experiencing a lot of pressure, like internal pressure from themselves, pressure from a partner, or sometimes perceived pressure from a partner, feeling like, oh, it's been so long now. Maybe it's taking too long. Maybe it's all going to feel different. Am I going to have pain? Obviously, there's the physical healing. Like you said, a lot of people get tearing with birth. So how is that healed? Am I going to have physical pain? Are things going to feel different down there? And then the body image stuff that can come up around, like, your body has changed and things are different. And some people fear that their partner will judge them, or they don't feel as confident in their body as they did previously after the birth and as they're navigating that postpartum period. So I think that's a lot of what comes up with the women I speak to.
Yeah, and I guess when we're wanting to get back in the saddle,
right?
I guess, what would be some tips to just get started again?
Yeah, for sure. So getting back in the saddle with postpartum intimacy, I think the most important thing is just going really slowly, not pressuring yourself, talking to your partner. This is one of the things that comes up a lot with couples that I speak to and people in relationship who want sex to just be easy, right? We're conditioned to think that it should just magically happen. We should never need to talk about it. It should all just be fine and no one needs to say anything. But the reality is that great sex actually comes from talking about it regularly most of the time. And very few people have that kind of sex where they just sync and it's just magically amazing the whole time. It's very rare, like very unusual, I would say. And a lot of people just fall into habits of having sex that's maybe not quite right, or overriding a little bit because they're too scared to say something, or internalizing, like believing that their partner's pressuring them when they're not, or not speaking up when they are feeling pressure. And all of those things contribute to this kind of tension and stress around it, and like emotional stress, right, which can lead to us wanting to avoid it. So speaking with your partner about it and saying, hey, I really want to be intimate with you again, but I'm feeling nervous about these things, and I'm scared about that, and I'm worried that this, and just voicing those concerns, I think, is really healthy. And creating chatting together about what your desires are or what your expectations are, and feeling into, what do we actually need right now? A lot of the time after going through birth, people expect sex and intimacy to feel the same as it did before. and expect their life to be the same as it did before. And of course it's not. And then it's this whole process of coming to terms with a different relationship with everything. And when that comes to sex and pleasure, it might mean you have less time, right? It might mean you're more tired. So you've got to find those little windows that it can fit. And that might be less penetration for a little while, or it might be going really, really slow, or finding windows for intimacy at an unusual time, right? Like in the middle of the day when your baby's down for a nap, or, you know, if you've got bigger kids at school and like there's an opportunity for that. So it's just being willing to find space in unexpected areas of your life, and cultivating intimacy outside of the bedroom as well. When you have a lot on your plate and you're navigating and tag teaming and parenting, I think there's a lot to be said for the flirting and just playing around and you know, just kind of inviting that connection with the body and with the sensual side of things, without believing that if I flirt with my partner now, it means that they are going to want sex later, you know? Or
Yeah.
if we flirt now, if I say something now, if I'm a little bit suggestive, or I kind of, you know, bring some kind of energy, that means I need to follow through in XYZ way later. And later I know I'm going to be too tired, so I'm just going to not connect at all. You know, that can happen, right? So it's just allowing ourselves to move those boundaries around what we think it should look like and what it needs to mean, and just remember that, you know, connection in the moment is just connection in the moment. And if your partner makes a story about it, then that's a conversation to have and say, hey, I just want to be able to flirt with you sometimes without feeling pressure in this way. Is that okay? Can we create space for that?
Yeah. And gosh, that's just hit the nail on the head. My husband and I have been, you know, my son is almost 3 and we're still somewhat navigating out of, I guess, just he saw me going through like a very dark night and, you know, navigating a lot of mental health stuff at the time. And he didn't know how to help me. He felt really helpless, but he was navigating his own stuff with his, you know, sexuality and what he wanted. And it's now we're coming out of it, but at the time it felt really uncomfortable. And exactly what you said, I was scared to flirt or like grab his butt or give him a cuddle in the kitchen because I was like, what if he wants to have sex?
What's it gonna mean?
Yeah, I'm like 9:30 at night, like it's too late.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I love everything you said, because I wish I had like heard of you 5 years ago when I had a baby, because that would have been amazing. I guess as well, like, you know, we're starting to have sex again. We're back in the saddle, and it's you know, sometimes when we've healed physically, I wanted to talk about any psychological reasons for pain during sex as well, because I know that I guess some people are sort of new to this area, but we store a lot of trauma and sexual experiences. And I think sometimes we can subconsciously clam up while we're having sex. Could you touch base a bit more on some of the, I guess, mindset reasons that it might hurt during sex?
Yeah. So if you have had a challenging birth, particularly, or a birth that didn't go to plan, or a birth that required a lot of medical intervention that was unexpected for you, all of that is going to impact your relationship with your pelvis and your lower body. So, what some women who I speak to have experienced is feeling like their body betrayed them, feeling frustrated that, you know, they had a plan and something else happened, having had maybe medical experiences where they didn't feel that their boundaries were respected. I've spoken to a lot of people who've had like really heartbreaking experiences in medical situations where someone, you know, spoke in a not so nice way to them, or was not listening to their needs and was pushing them towards something without really, you know, them consenting properly to it. And of course, like birthing in a hospital environment under bright lights, and it's a very intense experience, of course. And for a lot of people, when the intensity of that can impact their relationship with their pelvic area and their vulva and vagina. And so, particularly if it involved physical pain, which often it does, then we can anticipate that any connection with that area is going to involve physical pain. And that's why orienting to pleasure is so powerful and so important, because we're literally teaching the body, you're safe, it's okay, pleasure is good, because on some level, part of what the body's experiencing is like this area bad, painful, uncomfortable, not okay, unsafe potentially. And all of that is going to mean that, it can make us anticipate pain, and it can also make us more likely to perceive pain. Yeah.
It is just a perception. Like that's what pain is. It's a neural perception of something, isn't it? So I guess from there, where we're getting back in touch with ourselves. Okay, so let's forget our partners. Yoni mapping. Now, it looks simple in your beautiful Instagram videos, but it does so much more than just you're not just stimulating your clitoris. Like it's so much more than that. Can you explain a little bit about yoni mapping?
Sure. So self-yoni mapping is something that I teach a lot in my programs, and it's essentially using a wand to gently massage and explore your pelvic space externally and internally. So the idea behind it, there's technique, of course, and I'll get to that in a moment, but the idea behind it is it's about creating a relationship with your lower body, your vulva, your vagina, your internal space that has nothing to do with anything medical. That's not about a partner. That's not about just trying to have a quick orgasm. That's not about like eliminating, peeing or pooping or anything like that. It's just creating a relationship with it for yourself. And as women, so many of us have been through so many challenging experiences related to this part of the body, whether it's, challenging births or miscarriage or abortion or sexual abuse, sexual trauma of various kinds, medical challenging things. All of that can contribute to having a quite complicated relationship with that area. And so I see self-yoni mapping as this really direct way of reclaiming that space and not just feeling it and tuning into it and knowing that it's there, there's lots of practices for that, right? Like even just dance and movement that connects with the pelvis is really great for that. But there's something very different about using your hands and a particular wand that allows you to reach all these spaces internally, that is just connecting and reclaiming this space just for you. And people find it really, really powerful. So it has a lot of benefits. Self-yoni mapping can support you to feel more sensitivity internally, to release patterns of numbness, to release patterns of pelvic tension, because a lot of us have chronic tension build up in the pelvis. So helping to gently relax that with massage is just really healthy. It can help us to feel more during penetrative sex, to sensitize areas to feel more pleasure generally, right? So you might be someone who's mostly focused on the clitoris for pleasure, but we can also feel pleasure in areas like the G spot or the A spot and the cervix. And these areas, then it's not just like, oh, I touched it once, I didn't really feel much, so I guess it's not possible for me. Pleasure is a skill that we can build, and we can support our bodies to deepen their pleasure receptors and to create more pathways of pleasure in the brain as well, that mean that we're able to open up to, first of all, more fulfilling experiences of self-intimacy and with a partner as well, but also deeper orgasmic experiences. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of the context and the benefits. And then as a practice, a lot of it is about taking some time to really connect with your whole body before doing anything genital, because that's really important. And then exploring externally and then slowly moving internally, mainly letting go of any goal, letting go of the idea that you're trying to get anywhere, and just noticing as you touch different areas. Okay, I'm massaging my outer labia here. What's going on? Oh, it kind of feels a little bit tingly. All right, what if I move over to the other side? Oh, I don't really feel much there at all. Actually, it's kind of numb. Okay, interesting. So there's no good or bad. You're just noticing. This feels tingly. This feels a bit numb. Oh, that feels a bit uncomfortable. Just exploring. And as you move internally, and this is something that is incredible with this internal space, if we are only having penis and vagina sex, if we haven't really explored our own internal space in different ways, and we haven't had a partner really get in there with fingers, there will be places inside your body that have never been touched that you can easily reach with a wand. And touching these areas is really incredible because it can promote blood flow. We're just opening to more pleasure and aliveness and sensitivity down there, which opens us up to so much more. Like the first time I experienced this, I felt like so much pleasure, but I also felt angry because I was like, why do we not learn about this? Why wasn't I told that my body was capable of so much pleasure? I've been having shitty sex for years. I didn't even know this was a thing. And yeah, so it's there's a lot more to it in terms of technique, and that's what I teach in my work, but and principles and everything like that. But essentially it's slowly, gently, without a goal, creating a relationship with your body, but mainly your lower body, your pelvic space, and your internal pelvic area.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love what you just said about like not reclaiming, but the space is yours. Your vulva, your vagina, your abdomen, lower down, it's all yours. And I think we possibly are conditioned as women from Lord knows what age to it's not yours, it's where babies come from, is where it's named. Like, what's this? This is your vagina. That's where babies come from. It's your
Right. Yeah.
vagina. It's what you do with it. Um, and like even when you were talking then, I'm like every sexual experience I had up to my husband, I was like giving Oscar-winning fake orgasms because I
Right.
for my, partner, that's all sex was for them. It was rubbish for me. And then I remember with my husband the first time, like he's a bit older, and the first time I had an orgasm, I was like, whoa, I'm missing out. But then that relationship with myself still wasn't there. It was him, and I relied on him for an orgasm. So I saw the link on your page as well to buy a wand, but would you recommend more being guided in how to use it?
Yeah, so of course you can get a wand and just explore. I have a bit of a thing with sex toys. I feel like we are told to buy our way out of our challenges. A lot of the time it's like, oh, just buy a vibrator, just buy this type of vibrator, just get this thing. And I maybe it's just because I work in this field, but my feed is just full of like sex shops selling all kinds of random toys. And I think that stuff can be helpful, and there are some products that I recommend, and but a lot of people I speak to, they're like, I've got a drawer full of sex toys and a lot of things just get used once and then I just chuck it in the drawer, or it's like gathering dust under the bed. So you can absolutely buy a wand and explore using it in different ways, and you can find a few things online about what to do and how to get started. What I know is that the internal pelvic work is a lot more effective if we have a relationship with our body already. And this would be looking at things like, and this is kind of the process we go through in my programs, like whole body pleasure and aliveness, your relationship with pleasure in the everyday, and your connection with the senses, and just your body generally. And then touch, like when you're connected to whole body touch in lots of different ways, then you're going to feel more when it comes to pelvic internal touch as well. And then pelvic embodiment, so connecting with your lower body generally separate from touch, so like moving it in different ways, and bringing more blood flow through different pelvic embodiment practices, and just learning about your pelvis and different ways of relating with it. And then moving towards like external exploration in different ways, and then internal. And that can feel like a bit of a process. And I know a lot of people want a quick fix, right? And they're like, just let me buy the thing and get in there and do it. And there's absolutely merit in that if you feel confident doing that and you're not overriding your body. But you're likely to get much more benefit from it if you go on a bit of a journey with like pleasure generally, and whole body connection and touch and pelvic awareness before jumping into the internal wand work.
I love that. And I guess that's further backing what you were saying about the quick fix.
Right.
So many quick fixes out there where this is like a lifelong connection that you're teaching women with their bodies that they can use forever, really. Because, I mean, our body is such a beautiful tool. So many points to it that are fantastic. We just got to figure out how to work the machinery.
Right. Yeah, and there's a quote that I shared in the class that was that I feel sums up a lot of my approach with this work, and that's like, your body is a relationship to discover, not a problem to be fixed. It's from Gina LaFlamme, and every time I read it, I'm like, oh yes, it's so true. Because a lot of the time, people come to my work being like, I've got this problem, I want to fix it. I have low libido, I'm disconnected, I'm numb, I can't have sex, or I want to have this type of orgasm. And I understand that because, we all have challenges, right? But when we approach it from this place of like, I have to fix this problem and I have to tick a box and then it'll be done and I'll be finished and I won't have to think about it again. Unfortunately or fortunately, when it comes to pleasure and sexuality, it is a lifelong exploration. And, I've been exploring this stuff for 12 years and I'm still discovering new things. It's continually like ever expanding and deepening. And sometimes I tell people that and they're like, oh, what? You're telling me I have to do all this stuff now? Or like, oh, I thought I could just be done with it, tick a box and have it finished. And I mean, it's different for everyone, but I really feel like our relationship with our pleasure potential is infinite, right? It can keep expanding. And every time that I've thought, okay, this is the most pleasure I can feel, like I feel like this is the peak of what's possible, it goes beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And not that we all need to focus on that, but I find it really interesting to explore, and it can give a lot to our lives in so many ways. And yeah, when we see it as this ever evolving relationship, in the same way that a relationship with a partner is an unfolding thing, right? It's not that you tick that you've done the relationship when you're still in it. It's ongoing, right? So the same way our relationship with ourselves and our sexuality and our pleasure and our pelvic space, it's ongoing.
Yeah, we change. That's
Right.
We grow, we learn, we change. I think you can look at it from an exciting point of view. Like it's exciting that we get to this
Yes.
stuff. It's not, it can feel scary and foreign, but it's really exciting. Like how great to feel more connected. And I think when you're first starting out, you can often be like, oh, it's never going to work, or, I just want to have an orgasm. And I think that what you're saying is so amazing. Just to ask some nitty gritty questions. Um, I've seen a bit online against using lubricant. So I work with a lot of mums that are breastfeeding and somewhat dehydrated, and they don't find themselves getting as wet as they would pre-baby. What are your feelings on using lubrication, or any tips there to make sex a little bit less, I guess, daunting?
Firstly, I'm curious, like, what have you heard against lubrication? I
Uh,
don't feel like I've heard that.
I've heard that it's cheating. So
Oh, what?
if you're not
I thought you meant like something medical. It's cheating.
it's cheating. Like if you're not that wet, you shouldn't
Oh,
be going for penetrative sex, really, was the bottom.
right. Right. I mean, lubrication is complicated because there's also a mental aspect to it. I have found that, I mean, I never used to use lube. And then in the last few years, I've been using it. And I've noticed that the lube almost like helps to prepare my body for the natural lubrication to come. It can also kind of give a little confidence boost at the start to be like, oh, yeah, this is all right. And then the body's like, right, yes, we can do this. And then it kind of comes. Um, it's very individual, and if you're experiencing chronic dryness, there can be different reasons for that, and sometimes related to hormones and like estrogen levels and stuff like that. So it can be good to get it checked if it feels like you're chronically dry, and of course that can happen as people go into like perimenopause and menopause, so a bit later on. But with lube, generally I'm a fan. I think we do want to be careful what type of lube we're using, because a lot of them are pretty toxic, or have all kinds of crap in them, and the tissues of the vagina are very absorbent. It's just whatever you put in there, it's just going straight into your body. It's very permeable. So water-based lubes, anything natural, aloe-based lubes are great. Yeah, there's quite a few really good natural lube companies out there doing really good work these days. So I would just look for something that is water-based or aloe-based and natural. And that way, if it's water-based, you can use it with condoms as well, because silicone-based lubes and condoms don't mix together.
Okay, awesome. And vibrators. So I have only recently purchased one, and I had one, threw it out a few years ago because my pleasure didn't matter. And then I could not have a normal orgasm. Like I could only have an orgasm from oral sex with my husband. That was the only way I could do it. Are you for, against, in the middle? Like where are you at with vibrators?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's complicated, like, because I feel like vibrators have been held up as this like ultimate torch of female empowerment, you know, and I struggle with that. I had my first orgasm, well, my very first orgasm was on a bicycle. We kind of created this vibrating feeling. And then after that, I went to like an electric toothbrush and then a vibrator. But for me, I became quite addicted to that particular type of release. And that did over time desensitize my body to intimacy in a partnership, because it was just my body got very used to just getting off in this one particular way. So now I don't use vibrators much. I kind of prefer a more acoustic approach, like personally. But I think it's very individual, and some people really benefit from them. And I think there's different ones now, right? And there's so many different toys, but there's the vibration. The two main ones are the vibration and then the suction. Have you tried the suction ones?
Oh, but I'm sitting here like, let's order one of those.
Yeah. The suction is very different to vibration. And sometimes people, because the thing with me, right, is my body's quite sensitive. So I find with any of those toys, even on the lowest setting, it's way too intense for me. Like
It's a
I
lot.
struggle, right. And I think that that's the case for a lot of people. And the problem is, if on the lowest setting, the stimulation you're getting from the toy means that you're tensing up your whole body and you're contracting and you're holding your breath, and you find it really hard to relax and breathe and feel connected to your body in the experience, then that's not going to be a really fulfilling orgasm, right? Your body might have an orgasm, like you're having that release in some way, but sometimes that type of release, at least this is my experience, if I just got a vibrator and jammed it on my clit and, you know, just kind of followed the normal pattern of tensing my body and contracting everything, I would have a release, but I would also be there afterwards being like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
that feeling of just like, meh, like, was that it? Okay, like, yes, I technically had an orgasm, but was it satisfying? No. So for me, I think if you're using a vibrator, but you want to feel connected to your body in the experience, it might be using it on a lower setting. It might be using it a little and taking breaks on and off in a session. Um, and just really tuning into your body while you're using it and feeling like, am I present in myself? Am I able to be present with the sensations? Am I tensing and squeezing everything? Okay, can I relax some of my body so that I'm a little more, you know, loose? Am I holding my breath? Okay, can I relax my breath a little bit and just, you know, let myself breathe? And what would it take while receiving that genital stimulation from the vibrator? What would it take to feel connected to the rest of my body? Maybe I can, like some vibrators, you can use hands free, right? So maybe that can be happening while you're like gently stroking your whole body, or, you know, just focusing on your breath or holding your hands on your body, or something that allows you to really stay present with all of the sensations rather than just fixating on like getting to that genital release.
Yes, I love that. There's something that my husband and I have been speaking more about, and he's trying to do, I guess, semen retention. So things like dry orgasms and stuff are really
Mm.
so the not having a genital release, which is obviously different for women and men. Yeah, it intrigues me. It intrigues me.
Mm.
And then I guess the other thing, I think I know where I stand on this. So pornography, I sort of started to realize maybe 4 years ago that it didn't do me any good. Okay. How do you feel about pornography?
Big questions today. um, Look, personally, I don't watch it and I'm not interested in it. I have watched it a little. I've actually never used porn to get off. Um, I've just more watched it a couple of times, like out of curiosity, um, or when someone else was pushing me to watch it. But I don't find watching other people do sexy stuff, I don't find it really arousing. And I think that's not for everyone. Like, some people do find it super arousing, right, to watch other people have sex. So that's my very personal stance on it, is like, never been that into it. But I think it's very individual, and there are different types of porn. And obviously the whole industry is very problematic, and for many different reasons. There's a lot of child porn. There's a lot of the people aren't paid a fair wage. There's a lot of really awful stuff happening in that industry. So I think on an ethical level, if you're going to consume porn, I believe in consuming ethical porn, and that does exist. There are people, there are like feminist porn companies, like Erica Lust does a whole thing that is like female focused porn companies. There's porn that focuses on female pleasure. There's porn you can find that is created by people of their own connection with their body, or their own connection with their partner who they're actually in a relationship with. And even though I've never personally been interested in looking that up, I can see the benefit in that, right? Like, witnessing people who are actually in a relationship, who actually care about each other, and just maybe seeing like the creativity of that or something. Yeah, I can see that would be quite different to watching some mainstream porn with people who probably just met that day and aren't being treated that well, and maybe aren't into what's happening and are kind of bored and don't know each other, you know? So I think there's variations with porn. One of the main problems, I think, is that kids these days are exposed to it at a really young age, because it's obviously all over the internet. And then, people grow up watching it, like as teenagers, like masturbating to it and looking at it. And then we can believe that porn sex is real sex. And of course it's not. And that can set us up for all kinds of, patterns, like you spoke about faking orgasm, or, like performing in a certain way, right? Going into the performance mode, or thinking that, I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you're in an intimate kind of situation with someone, but you're almost outside of your body, watching yourself from the outside, being like, what does my body look like? Am I making the right shapes? How does
Oh,
my
yeah.
butt look? What do
So
they
it's
think
your
of
belly.
me?
Where are your boobs? Like,
Right, exactly. And so all of that can cause us to focus on this external orientation with sex. And I think this is also maybe what contributes to that, the idea of sexy as an aesthetic, right? Like, oh, you can't be sexy because you're over 30, or you can't be sexy because, like, you weigh this much, or because like you've got these lines, or you've had a baby so your belly looks different, or like you're not wearing the right thing, or you're not wearing makeup, or you don't have the right sexy lingerie on, right? Like all of this focus on sexuality or sexiness as not something that's inherent in us, that we can express in different ways, but something that is a performance, and it's completely visual and aesthetic in nature. And I think that's really unhealthy and really dangerous, because when we're so fixated on that, on how we look, trying to be sexy, we disconnect from our own natural healthy expression of that.
and I think as well, they are learning more, or we are learning more about like how addictive it is and the dopamine hit that we get from it. And I think, I know for my personal reasons was that I was finding it hard to be turned on from vanilla, and I was getting like darker and darker.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, when I stopped, I found like, oh my God, like I'm able to really get into it again. Where I think sometimes, well, I was literally told like, oh, it's fine, and I was exposed to porn really, really early, too early. I found it very early. So I sort of had a bit of a complicated relationship with it. So I was very curious to see where you stood on that. Now, your program, so I know that your School of Embodied Pleasure, you've just closed your doors for now. When will that be opening up again?
Next year. So probably early in the year. We haven't set the dates yet, but with the big program that I do, we close the doors for people to go through that whole process together, and then open again later on. So probably there's a chance next year that I'll be able to open it multiple times, but I always have a lot of different projects going on, and I have a range of short courses as well for couples and individuals, but I really love being able to guide people through a longer experience and on a deeper kind of multi-month journey creating that relationship with their bodies and their internal space. And that's a big part of what we do in the School of Embodied Pleasure.
And you also have the one-on-one work. So you work with men, women, couples.
Just women usually, although I'm thinking about opening to couples because I do love working with couples. But at the moment, it's mostly just women and 3 and 6 month long-term coaching containers. But I'm also about to open my books just for one-off like clinic hours once a week, because I know some people would really benefit from, I mean, most people I speak to have challenges that would benefit from like a much longer exploration over time. But some people have just a really particular little thing going on that they need really specific support with. And there is a lot that we can do in an hour session. So that's an option as well.
Oh, that's amazing. And so the best way for people to get in contact with you, so at bonniebliss.co on Instagram, and your website's www.bonniebliss.co. Yeah. .com.au.
Just .co.
All right, awesome. And yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you jumping on. I feel like so many people are going to get so much out of this. I know that your stuff online is just blowing my mind regularly. And yeah, I just really appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been really fun. I mean, these are all my favorite things to talk about. So it's just fun to be asked questions and be able to riff on these topics that I love so much. But yeah, I really also loved hearing your experiences and your insights. And I think it really helped that you were so open sharing.
Well, there's no point keeping it to yourself. We're all just
Right.
experiencing these things thinking no one else is, but it's not true.
For sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bonnie.
Thank you.